Folks, this Sunday's Gospel deals with a very important distinction in the Middle East of Jesus' day and ours, the real and the ideal. Matthew chapter 21, verses 28 through 32. Jesus said to the chief priests and elders of the people, "What is your opinion? A man had 2 sons. He came to the first and said, 'Son, go out and work in the vineyard today.' He said in reply, 'I will not.' But afterwards changed his mind and went. The man came to the other son and gave the same order. He said in reply, 'Yes, sir,' but did not go. Which of the 2 did his father's will?" They answered, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Amen, I say to you, tax collectors and prostitutes are entering the theocracy before you. When John came to you in the way of righteousness, you did not believe him, but tax collectors and prostitutes did. Yet even when you saw that, you did not later change your minds and believe him." A Christian missionary in the Middle East used to share this parable about the 2 sons, only verses 28 through 30 of Matthew chapter 21, with villagers that he regularly visited. After sharing just this parable, he'd ask the Middle Eastern villagers, "So, which of the 2 was the better son?" The vast majority answered that the son who said yes to his father, even though he did not go out to work in the vineyard, was without doubt the better son. Why? It's because the son's reply was honorable and respectful. His answer was what the father wanted to hear. That he never went to work in the vineyard is beside the point, which in the Middle East is always honor. Remember that life in the Middle Eastern world of the Bible is very public. Honor, the core value of this culture for the last 4,000 years, requires such publicity. The dialogue between the father and his 2 sons in this parable takes place not in private, just between 2 at a time, but rather in public, within view and earshot of many villagers. Just like their modern-day descendants, the Middle Eastern villagers in this parable favor the respectful yet disobedient son over the disrespectful but obedient son. Now let's talk about the key distinction, the ideal and the real. All cultures distinguish between the ideal and reality. But the gap between these 2 is greater in other cultures than in the ancient Middle East, generally speaking. Westerners generally believe that the ideal is the norm by which reality should be judged. So for Americans and other Western people, if reality does not measure up to the ideal, it is flawed. Some Middle Eastern cultures prefer to blur the line between the ideal and the real. Like modern Middle Eastern respondents to Jesus' parable, the ancients also would believe against reality that giving an honorable answer is sufficient even if accompanied by disobedience hidden from the public eye. In their culturally specific mind, you see, conforming to the ideal of speaking respectfully, "Yes, Father, I will go work in the vineyard," is sufficient to fulfill the commandment to honor one's father and mother. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 16. Honor is a public claim to worth that is confirmed by public acknowledgement of that claim by others. The father gives a very public command to 2 sons. His claim to honor is that the sons will respond with respect. The public watches the responses. One son responds honorably, and in the judgment of the crowd, the father's honor claim is valid and affirmed. But the other son responds shamefully. He publicly humiliates his father. "No, I'm not going." And the crowd's immediate judgment would deny the father's honor claim in this instance. You know, it's not very likely that the crowd or the father went to check on the subsequent behavior of each son, whether or not they followed through. What matters in this world is what you say. That's much more important than what you do. Now let's consider Jesus' challenge. Jesus did not ask which son behaved honorably. Instead, Jesus asked, which of the 2 did the will of his father? Modern Middle Easterners would certainly echo the judgment of Jesus' listeners. The first son, the one who answered shamefully, yet ultimately went and worked in the vineyard as he was directed by his father. They recognized the importance of obedience, but the honorable appearance was more important still. Now consider Jesus' explanation. Jesus addresses this parable to the chief priests and elders, who approached him while he taught in the temple and asked for his credentials. By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority? We, the legitimate temple authorities, didn't commission you. We didn't license you. You're not our change agent. Where did you get all this stuff from? All these things you're doing. They are challenging Jesus' honor. The parable of the two sons serves Jesus as a master strategy for defending his honor and presenting a counter-challenge to his adversaries. The point of the parable is quite evident to the listeners. With his explanation, Jesus rubs salt into the wound his parable has opened. The toll collectors and harlots are like the first son. Yeah, initially they said screw off to God, but hearing John the Baptist preaching, they transformed their lives and are doing what pleases God. The chief priests and elders are like the second son. They too heard John the Baptist preaching and saw the responses of the toll collectors and the harlots. They feigned acceptance, but refused to accept John as a messenger from God. So they gave an honorable word, but that is not enough. As Jesus says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the theocracy, but only the one who does the will of my patron in Sky Vault." Is this what Americans mean when we identify some religious people as hypocrites?